Hi, everyone. It's Christy again for day 3 of launching your writing workshop. Today, we're going to talk a lot about the philosophy and of this work. It's and kind of like how we can consider some of the rituals that we might have in place for kids when we're starting to establish our writing workshop culture. I always think to myself like, sometimes we are so focused on like, do I have this mini lesson done perfectly? Are the kids actually really writing? Are they producing lots and lots? And what's the quality of their work? And sometimes I get so lost in some of the rigor I may be around the work, which is so important, of course. I forget really the reason why we're doing this and the philosophy behind it, and how no matter what, I want to make sure that I keep that always in the center in everything I do every day, because I know that it will produce those things that I want it to produce. Kids writing lots and lots, and great lessons that inspire and support, and and kids seeing themselves as writers and really feeling confident and deepening their craft. So, what is that philosophy? And it all stems. It doesn't stem from like a mini lesson, like I said before. It all sort of stems from Brian Cambourne's research, and he researched, I don't know, 20 plus years ago, that he studied children when they first learned to speak, whenever that might be, whether it's like 5 months old, or 18 months. The verbal communication that kids are doing. He studied those conditions, like how do children learn how to speak? And he says that those conditions of learning are the very best conditions of learning. And I truly believe that when you have Cambourne's 7 conditions happening in your classroom every day, simultaneously, not one is more important than the other, that the kids will become incredible writers, and will meet their fullest potential in learning in this area of writing and reading, for that matter. We're talking about launching your writing workshop. This goes hand in hand with reading as well, if you're teaching reading workshop in this way. So those 7 conditions of learning, I'll talk briefly about them. But it's better for me to come work with you and really show you how this goes in play, how this sort of works together, or for you and your school to study Cambourne and really like question and ask and think a little bit about it. But his 7 conditions. First condition is immersion, and so you want to think about it. Immerse kids in whatever it is that they're writing. I know that nobody taught me this better than Georgia Hurd, how important it is to spend like a week before you launch your poetry unit to read lots and lots of poetry, and how that ongoing hearing and seeing what are we trying to do here is so supportive for kids. And so children, before they're even born, they're immersed in language. So yeah, it makes sense, the immersion piece. Demonstration, big deal. I know for me, I don't remember in school ever having a teacher demonstrate to me how to make my writing better. Like really slow it down and have a strategy, and to be transferable, you know? It felt like there was a lot of either correcting or just, marked up writing. Just marked up. Here's your level. Here's your grade. It's probably going to be a C or a D in your writing, and with no real feedback, and certainly no demonstration on like, okay, so let me teach you how to really write. To really think about your introductions, your leads, and let me show you how to write a setting lead, for example, and break it down. So demonstrations is definitely a big one. Responsibility. This is a tough one. I think about kids all the time, kind of figuring out, kids, infants, babies, toddlers, figuring out what does conversation look like. It's so funny. You can have a conversation with a 5-month-old, and they have figured out that a conversation means to look at the person. Nobody told them that. Nobody taught them that. They watched, they were immersed in it, and they problem solved, right? That's what the responsibility piece is all about, problem solving, right? But we often, in the teaching of writing, especially, more so than in reading, I feel like, because children can hide this a little bit. You can't hide it in writing. We're so quick to run over. And what are you going to write about? Why don't you write about this? Why aren't you writing, right? And instead of letting kids do a little problem solving, we don't want them frustrated, certainly not. But we want to give them a little space. We want to say, we trust you. You got this. Let them be responsible. You've got, a writer's notebook. You have a heart and a brain and a magic pen. You're good to go. You're good to go. So look at the charts up in your room. Look at the person next to you. Listen into a conference that your teacher's having. But be responsible. And as a teacher, I need to say, you got this. I don't want to swoop over and fix this or get you started. That's a common thing. I just have to get that person started every day. Well, I wonder how they see themselves then. Because if they feel like the teacher is getting them started every day, I don't know that they can see themselves as a writer, because they need her to start them. So how could they have that confidence to where they go, hey, I got this on my own, So responsibility is such a tough one and such an important one, and one that I work with teachers around for many years, because we want so much for kids to feel successful. And we feel as if we're not going over and helping all the time, they're not going to feel that success. They will. So responsibility is a big thing. So we have immersion, we have demonstration, practice. Oh my goodness. So important to have opportunities to practice. I think about this. Again, children are practicing speaking by when they're 3, 4, 5 months old. And they're speaking all the time in their crib, in the stroller, wherever. But I think about that practice piece and when I'm learning something new and how important that is. And, I could not have, I think I was able to, when I was running, get up to about 7-8 miles. That was certainly not on the first day that I ran, for sure. I was about, 1 or 2 minutes the first day that I ran. But I practiced every day and over time built up my stamina. And that was how I could get to 3-4 miles in running. Same thing with, something I do all the time now is yoga. It took me a long time of practicing a lot of downward dogs with a lot of coaching in the midst of that practice to get my downward dog where it needs to be. Kids need that too in writing. They need long stretches of time, long stretches of time every single day, with their pen in hand and their notebook or their paper and doing the actual work of writing. So practice is such a big deal, such a big deal. Celebrating approximations. You know, when kids are learning to speak for the first time and they say choo choo for juice, what do? We say, no, you didn't say that correctly. Let's put a sock in your mouth. No. Instead, we're like, juice, juice, that's right. That's right, juice. So we are getting super excited and celebrating those approximations when children learn to speak. However, sometimes when we're looking at a notebook or, a first grader's, book, and we're looking through and we see like no spaces at all in a first grader, we're like, oh my goodness. We see so much of the deficit instead of the strength, or instead of how they are today. And wherever they are today is where they are supposed to be. And to celebrate that piece of this is where they're supposed to be, and accepting that with approximation, in that I'm wrapping my arms around you and saying, like, I love every bit of the writing that you're doing today because you're doing your very best, and this is where you are, and we're going to celebrate it because it's better than yesterday. And then now we're going to think about tomorrow, So that can be a tough thing, especially when kids are struggling and we see how far they need to go maybe to get to the standard, when we think about the Common Core. The first thing if we're constantly, thinking about what's next, or teaching to appear instead of what Vygotsky says, that zone of proximal development. So if your writer's here and we want to teach here, we will never move them. And then also, I think, so many of these conditions really impact a writer's confidence. So we want to celebrate approximations for sure. We want to have high expectations for all. I was a very young mom when I had my daughter. My husband and I never once thought that she was not going to be able to speak. It never really occurred to us. We just knew she'd speak when she spoke, right? However, when I started teaching fourth grade, I had a little boy in my class. His name is Anthony, and he had about 2 lines of words, and I couldn't even really recognize the words. There were no spaces, capital letters in the middle of his words. And I remember, it was my first year teaching. I had a mentor. I worked in a writing demonstration school, so I had like a really huge, amazing support mentor, Janie Gilbalt. And she was the most beautiful writing mentor I could ever possibly have, because she didn't teach me a whole lot about the craft of writing, but she taught me so much about teaching writing. And one of the things that she taught me is to have high expectations for all. I had no expectations or negative expectations for Anthony. I was like so concerned about Florida Writes, was the test at the time. I taught fourth grade. I was like, am I going to get Anthony to score well on the test? And Janie, she believed in him, and she said to me, she was like, Christy, let's hang on. Let's give him time to practice, and we'll see what happens, in her glorious Janie way. And boy, did she do miracles with that writer. And with me, she gave me the greatest gift ever, to see all to celebrate in him and have high expectations for every child. Like, expect you walk into this classroom, you're going to succeed, and you're going to do well on the test. And Anthony did. So that's pretty incredible. He grew so much that year, and I'm so grateful for Janie to give him that gift, and for me. So immersing kids in whatever it is that you're teaching, writing or reading, books as well. Demonstration, being able to really, slow it down, teach responsibility, giving kids opportunity to problem solve, and maybe to fail inside of that, and that's okay, because that's how we learn and grow. to practice, lots of time for practice, to celebrate approximations, and then to have high expectations. And then the last condition is feedback and celebrations. And so really important that that we're giving kids feedback, and like I said, in their zone of proximal development. And that's what's so gorgeous about the teaching of writing, and why it's and reading, is that in this way, when we think about Cambourne's conditions, is that it really supports differentiation, because we can meet kids wherever they are. Like I said, wherever they are is where they should be. And so when we are sitting down next to kids during writing workshop, and we're having a conference with them, and we're saying, what work are you doing as a writer today? We are listening eagerly, and we are so in the moment and so in awe of this writer, and so that we can give them the feedback that they need in their zone of proximal development, which is going to be very different for all of your kids in your classroom. So these 7 conditions, I feel like are so important when we're teaching writing workshop, that I hold them near and dear to my heart, and that all of them are happening simultaneously when we do this thing called writing workshop. And when we teach writing workshop every day, we know that we are going to hit on these 7 things. We're going to, immerse them in the thing that they're going to write. We're going to demonstrate in a mini lesson in a conference all the time. We're going to hold them accountable in the sense that they're going to problem solve and be responsible when they do that during independent writing time, right? We're going to have lots of times to practice, because we're going to teach writing every day, and we're hopefully going to let kids, write for up to 30 to 40 minutes uninterrupted, except if you're in kindergarten, maybe 20 in kindergarten. We're going to celebrate approximations every time we have a conference, and we give kids compliments, which we'll talk more about that on another day. We'll have high expectations for all, and that will be seen when we are gathering them around the rug, and we're coming together as a writing community, and wrapping our arms around our writers and calling them writers. Each and every one of them, it's saying, you got this, right? Giving them the magic pen, giving them a writer's notebook, telling them you have a heart and a brain. This is saying, like, okay, you high expectations for all. And then finally, when we confer with them, and also at the end of the unit, thinking about celebration. When we're conferring with them, we're going to be celebrating them individually. But at the end of the unit, we're definitely going to have celebrations. And that we'll talk about another day. We're going to talk about celebrations. But that's a big part of it. So Cambourne's conditions are something that I think about all the time, and that when I am going in and working with schools, I'm really trying to make each one of those conditions big for teachers, so they can see, like, how successful kids can be in growing as writers. The other thing I think a lot about, so that's really, to me, like the heart and core of the philosophy of the work, but I've also thought a lot about, like, what Brene Brown has been talking about in Dare to Lead, which I think is definitely the most important book this year to me. And she has a Netflix special too on, if you have not seen it, it's so worth watching. But I think for every educator is a leader, and that's why I think this book speaks to me so much. But she talks a lot about your core values, and for a long time, I think that, part of the 7 conditions that Cambourne talks about, I also would say, like, what Mary Osborne taught me is that I want to build kids' confidence as well as their craft. And as when children have confidence, they take risks in their craft, and when kids have more craft, it raises their confidence level, and so they go hand in hand. So I think, it's funny, Brene Brown has this great, you can get this online, this great sheet on what are your values, and she tells you to sort of narrow them down to 2 values. Oh my gosh, impossible! I mean, I don't know if you can see really, but I have 2 circled, but you see all those dots? There's like 30 values here. It's interesting activity to do with your school. it's really cool to get you to really think a little bit about what matters most to you, and I think this is so important, because I feel like a lot of times we get lost in the things that are coming down from us, whether it's the state level, the district level, the school level, the parent level. Like we have a lot of voices in our ears, in our life, but we are the ones, I'm speaking teachers, that are paving the way for your 25 to 30 amazing souls out there. And there was a reason why you got into education, and probably very similar. All of our we could remember. I can remember 25 years ago when I started and thought, I just want to make the world a better place. I want to change the world, and I want to do that for kids, and also I love kids. They're great human beings, and they're, I think, one of the most vulnerable people in our world, and they need to have people that love them and care for them and want the very, very best for them. So anyway, sometimes I think, though, because other people are feeding us, we get lost a little. Our value systems get lost. And I think that no matter what, like thinking about Cambourne's conditions of learning and asking yourself, like, do I agree with these 7 conditions? But then adding a condition in there, like, what are my values? What is my value system? And how can I make sure to hold close to those values when I am implementing writing or reading workshop along with those 7 conditions? So it's interesting, like I've done this a couple of times, and I was doing it again to sort of prepare for today, and I was like, originally my 2 were connection and gratitude, but I'm still like really, connection is a done deal. That's the number 1 piece, and that is just something that really matters to me. So. Yeah, it's important to me to connect with every person that comes in my life. And so that was like hands down, that's my number 1 value. I can't even, that was easy. But the second one, oh my gosh, it's impossible. And I decided, when I did this activity a couple months ago, the gratitude was my second one, but I'm still kind of tossing around generosity. That one I think is like, I just think I'm so, but see, I think it goes inside of gratitude. Like, I'm so grateful for all the generosity that my teachers have given me when they, especially this last summer, when they've opened themselves up and were so vulnerable in lots of different ways. Like, that's just such a generous gift that they could possibly give that to me. But I was also thinking about confidence, because I think that no matter what, it is my job to help teachers feel confident in this thing called writing workshop, and I feel empowered. And that's what Janie gave to me. That's what Mary Osborne gave to me. And those 2 were my number 1 mentors. And I think in turn too is that that confidence piece is critical for kids and their learning. And so I want to build up every single writer in my class, and again, make sure that they see themselves as writers. So I'm constantly also trying to model that for teachers as well, as like, how do we build kids' confidence up in class and in the midst of teaching writing workshop. So let me close for today with to say thank you for watching. If you're, thank you for watching, and I'm so grateful for you. Yeah, I'm so grateful for you. Have a great day. And by the way, I'm going out of town for the weekend, so I'm trying to keep these sort of live and current. So I'll see you on Monday. So day 4, which is going to be about volume, stamina, and independence. Woohoo! I'll see you on Monday talking about that. Okay, have a fabulous weekend. I'm going out of town to see my best friend, so I hope you're doing something really fun too. Okay, Have a great weekend. Bye.